what are we trying to let the user access? What is the easiest way for the user to access the data that we are giving them? Welcome back to GitTales. As you may remember from the last video, we are going to be asking the user to move a stylus around in order to calibrate the app to the machine. And today, I'd like to kind of get into the tool that will allow the user to accomplish that. But before we do that, I'd like to just look at two side ideas that I've had. One is that the object may be larger than this chord of this sweep of the arm is going to be able to write. Yeah? So, if that's the case, we may be able to cut around the base of the machine, kind of like sawing a hole in the ice. Of course, the same wisdom would apply. That several times might not be a good idea because then the machine might be falling through. If we do decide that this is a adventure worth providing the user of the machine, we could have the usual chord description here expand, show a full circle, and that circle shrink, scale down to fit in this space again. And then we just use our usual drawing programs that will be drawing the object in here. Another idea was using a tie down for the phone onto the machine. So the phone can provide a reticle such as this, and then move it up or over and have it centered right on the stylus. But then I get thinking that the stylus is going to be in the way. Then I get to thinking, why have this targeting system when you have a stylus? So another very optional design here. And I really like removing this altogether, not having the use case be tied to the top of the arm, for two reasons. One is that it's going to limit the usefulness of the machine if that's part of the necessary actions. You're going to inevitably not support all of the different phone sizes, and so immediately it cuts down on the number of people who are going to be able to access the app. Secondly, in order to do it right, I would want to have tie downs. So that wouldn't be too hard up here, and you just put some red, yellow, and black lines up here. Maybe the word tie down in very small horizontal print there. And this title bar can just be strapped over, with a zip tie or something. And that would be pretty straightforward. But then the question is, what do you do down here to be able to strap down on the other side, right? And here the problem becomes much more difficult. The lowest area of the phone, of course, is reserved for the system bar. We have buttons placed down here at the bottom, so a person can be able to use their thumb easily on these points. And that's why one puts buttons, by the way, down here instead of up here. It's very difficult to reach your thumb up here and do controls. It's much nicer to have the controls down here. However, that would require moving this up in order to allow for a strap down. The strap down area could not be above these buttons because of the way that the buttons will be working, and we're about to get into that. Anyway, here are two ideas that kind of had by the wayside, worth mentioning, but aren't going to be making it into a prototype anytime soon. Moving on. We got our buttons. What are we trying to let the user access? What is the easiest way for the user to access the data that we are giving them? So, as I understand it, the easiest places to work, as I said, with one's thumb, is down here on the bottom rather than up here on the top. Also, the ease of use is kind of like a bean. It's like an oddly shaped object. It's exactly what you think it would be. It becomes very easy to work with objects here. It becomes a little difficult here. It becomes incredibly difficult here. Bop, 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 bop. A bit easier here, but certainly very difficult up here. Here is manageable. You can reach your thumb over to the bottom and move it. Here, less manageable. Hard to have a slider. So, if I'm going to be making a slider, I'd like to have that on the left-hand side. A right-handed person, of course, I am leaving out that 10% who are left-handed. I would like to be glib and say sorry. However, given the correct amount of importance to this, depending on the application, layouts can be flipped. There's quite a bit of support for that in the Android programming, because of course Android also goes to China. Yes, and in there you have all your alignment wants to come from the right to the left. And in Android, they more begin and end. Or, of course, if it's inverted, begin and end. And that's where the justifications begin and end. Or, of course, if it's inverted, begin and end. And that's where the justifications line up to. So for Android, it's actually quite easy to flip this and really not suffer too much with having to redo all the margins and stuff like that. So how would a user use this, right? The user would be pressing on the button. That's how I envision this. And then the tool comes up, right? And it plays on top of the rest of the screen. I would say if we have a dark background, these would be little light pips going across. As you might see from the demo video, I have chosen green on black. So I'll make these pips green, just like the rest of the green here. Not shown here are two boxes that you can also see in the demo app. These are for displaying the values that are being slid upon. As the user is selecting this, I can't perceive how you would press down on this, it pops up, and then what, you're supposed to press once and then move it from the middle? No, it doesn't make sense at all that way. One would more naturally press down and slide up. Hence, this is not going to be able to be bidirectional, right? This can either advance or retreat the number, yeah? But always by moving in this direction. Moving down to here is a 0. That's fine to have a unidirectional value slider as long as one has a reverse toggle? Well, we can have 4 or 5 buttons on the bottom. 3, 4, 5. Not more than 5, but the number shall not be less than 3. We've got plenty of room for the other things that we'll be needing. Currently we're at 4, so we can add 5. The person should also then be able to select a tool. This is a tool selector. And that'll be height, width specifically, scaling to take care of both height and width. Later we can bring in rotates. We should also include speed in there as well, because the speed at which the arm is moving is very important to. So this gets pressed, this pops up, one starts sliding their thumb, moving the value. This gets pressed, this pops up, one starts sliding their thumb, moving the value. So how does one select the value? I have used a lot of touchscreen UIs. I'm certainly in the business of it. And the release mechanism is just wretched. The finitude of the ruler is quite easy, I think. If one moves their thumb quickly, the units of metrization should increase, and then as you move slower, they decrease. Makes for a very nice little UI where you can actually get down to decimal points as far as as the programmer cares to. Still is then when you release, oftentimes one's thumb is not perfectly conductive all the way around. You can see, I used a lighter or two in my life, and so I can't scrape on a screen quite the same way as I can with this finger. So the when one lifts off, the last piece that's conductive is the last part of that touch, yeah? Like that. And so it moves inevitably somewhat to the side. Let's correct for that, maybe. I'm just having these papers here so my scratching doesn't confuse, but it's just somewhat distracting now. Trust me, it looks worse than this paper. So when one's moving this up, here's my idea. Button is activated, one's moving the pips. I have now realized when I'm drawing this that the pips are best equidistant, and then it should the numbers that are related to the different pips should be changing in order to reflect that interval increasing and decreasing based upon the user's rate of movement, not rate of speed. The once they're moving, though, once they're on the screen and this comes up and they're moving it, and these numbers have changed, here's what I propose. That transparent overlays go up onto the screen. Transparent overlays, I kind of mean it like this, yeah? So you can still see a squirrel's leg, bits of the horse, right? Colors. That'll drop on top of it. Maybe a color close to this yellow, color close to this red, overlaid here and here. So that when the user moves along this edge here, which should be clear, just having green pips on the black background, these numbers start moving up. Then when the user moves into the yellow zone, the numbers stop moving. You can move your finger this way and that way, and the numbers will stay where they are. move back into the green zone, well, you're back to adjusting the numbers. And then, when you move to the red zone, you commit. And that maybe it should be the green zone, but we have green on black, so I do red in this case. And red will say, oh, that's the number that we want, and it'll lock into wherever it is. It will actually make the adjustment to the path that's on the screen, and save that adjustment or the new adjusted path to disk eventually. I am leaning more towards keeping the original path on the as saved, and then having a number of mutations on that, and the order of those mutations stored. That seems like it would be an easier thing to write. Again, if wiser heads have been here before, please do mention it. However, I think this will be quite a fun thing to code up and easy to do, these overlays. So we have them. We have the slider, the reverse toggle. It should be something easy for someone to recognize as a reverse. The kind of arrows, again, if you can see it on the demo app, that you usually see on a tool, I think are about right. Like, you know, the forward reverse button on a handle or something like that. And fortunately, we have some of those in the open source icon library for Android. So I'll be using those. Of course, Apple can also use SVGs. And lastly, the OK button, some way to move forward from the screen. And again, there's this thing that I believe came from Apple, where they have navigation at the top. And as I described before, and this isn't me telling this out of an anecdotal, this is studies, white papers have been written, and the thumb does not work well on the top controlling things. You know this just by holding onto your own phone and when working with it. When Steve made that nice, tight iPhone 4S was the last one around for this thing, and it just, you can just pick it up, and of course you can move to the top of it because it's as big as a hand. Ergonomic design, that's what they were into. Nowadays, you can't find a phone that small unless you go to the SE, something like that. And so therefore, this old iPhone design of the things at the top are the controllers, much like on a computer, right? Does not work with something that's 5 inches, 6 inches. You want to be able to hold it and move where your thumb would like to move. I'll get the picture and show it to you. That's what I'm talking about. So we're going to have the thumb moving mostly down here, but the buttons for the thumb down here. Actions move up here. Other actions move this way. We're not going to have much at all up here. We'll have an X button for sure, just to look good. However, the back button will work just as well for that, because the back button goes back to the gallery. Nice, simple app. However, we will want to have the go button for whatever screen we're in. The next, we have a back. We should have next. That's what this can be. Now, I may want to take speed out of the tools and move it into its own button. I think a speedometer icon would be appropriate there. It would be intelligible. However, for now, I'm going to be dropping it up inside of the tools, and it really doesn't matter at this point where it is in terms of the development of the app. Design-wise, it may matter quite a bit. So this is my thinking about this. I hope you can see how this really does work well with one's thumb. patterns, the ease of use of a thumb. And of course, I'd like to have feedback on this. If you think that this design could be improved, I'd love to mention you as a collaborator on it. Whoever would be given this advice. The other idea with this too is that it should be able to be flipped on its side. Right, we have a lot of responsibility in Android for making sure that when the orientation has changed, that the app works in that new orientation, that the data and the objects in it are back to this. Now you have a horizontal object and you can move around maybe with two thumbs. The ergonomics changes. And so my wonder is what if this could be done so that even in this orientation, it's perfectly adequate to just be turned on its side. Right? Now the question is, are these symbols still recognizable? Yeah, down. Check mark will be on its side, or forward will be up. So that works. A little tool. The reverse still looks right. And hey, the slider still works down here on the bottom. The reason why I do that is partially because I'm lazy. It's a lot easier to make an app where you lock up the orientation. And as a matter of fact, for those of you who are making really quick apps, trying to get something out, demo to market, that sort of thing, you'll find that you'll be locking it to one orientation. And as a matter of fact, anyone else in your group will be asking you to lock it to one orientation, so you can get that demo product out and all that sort of thing. Now, is it incredibly difficult to make it so that the layout is more responsive to the orientation of the phone? It's not that difficult. It requires another set of boilerplate, basically, and you can get to understanding that pretty easily. However, as they say, it's one of those nice things you can kind of pull out of the bag as an Android programmer. Oh, by the way, I just flipped this switch on, inside of this, demo app, and bam, all of a sudden it's horizontally enabled. That'd be great. But of course it's not, and that one isn't what shipped. It just showed product. So hey, look, doesn't that look nice? Where did you get this idea? Oh my gosh! So this is another reason that this is should be able to work as well on its side. Because what if it is mounted? What if the person's using it as it's tied down, has it on the arm, or something like that? It should still be recognizable on this. Also, because it could be put down face first, mostly, is another great reason why not to have the layout change with respect to orientation. Because of course, when it's flat, that quaternion that says, where east is, where the horizon is pointing east. That's what the phone knows. Well, it doesn't, and its orientation now is neither up nor sideways from this quaternion. And so you'll see it flip to one or the other. Just like if you have, your phone set to the adaptive mode, you know what I'm talking about here. iPhone users, sorry, it's an Android thing. Well, I think that's all for today. Please hit that like button, subscribe, and most importantly, if you have any input on what I'm describing here and would like to pitch in your own wisdom, do leave a comment. I'll be looking for them. Thanks. Happy hacking.